Hello, peoples. Damien here. This one is kind of close to my heart. I started playing 5e. That was the first game, first TTRPG I played. I was running Lost Mine of Fandelver before I'd even played as a player, and I loved it. I had a lot of fun playing it. But then I started transitioning across the kind of the OSR, and I didn't realise it existed first of all, and I didn't understand really why. This is going to be covering kind of what the OSR is and the bits that I enjoy of it, and hopefully you'll be able to take some stuff that's going to make your game and your table a little bit better. I'm also going to do one of these for players as well, if players that want to give it a go. So right, I've made some notes to keep us on track. So basically the OSR, there's kind of a key thing to it, and it's, for me, it's rulings over rules. That is not a good screen. That's better. So it's ruling as over rules. So it's not about really strict mechanics. The GM sets a stage. The players really drive the narrative, and then there's chaos, and you all jump in. And for me, the nature of it has meant that I feel more like a player in my games. I enjoy the games more because I don't necessarily know what's happening, and that is kind of cool. So here's some reasons why I didn't thrive with 5e. And this isn't saying 5e is a bad game. 5e is an amazing game. Old Swords is based on 5e. So it's a fantastic mechanically, but there were certain things that didn't fit with my playstyle. So there was a lot of rules. I felt as a GM I was always trying to get the right rules to apply to certain situations. And there was a lot of lore for the settings, which again, players tended to know more than me, which made it harder to run games. I didn't have much time. And prepping games for 5e took me a hell of a lot more time than it does for running old school games or OSR style games, which is great for when you're time poor. I didn't feel like a player, and that's something I'm going to keep on coming back to here. And there's mechanics within the OSR that actually ensure that you feel more like a player in a game, and kind of, for me, changes your relationships with the players as you're playing. And also, I love being surprised. I didn't. And following a linear story, there was a certain element of surprise, but a lot of the kind of like published modules, which is where you tend to start, I felt like I was always steering people back to get them on track. And remember, like, all of this is it's not saying one is better than the other. This is just preference, and this is why the preference exists. And this is not an all or nothing kind of game. You can take the bits and apply it to the game that you're playing, the bits that appeal to you. So, how did it start? I started with Maze Rats. So I've done a video on Maze Rats before. I love it, but there was a couple of pages of GM rules at the back, and they really inspired me. They made me think, God, I really want to play these kind of games. It felt a lot more creative to me. And then that led me in the direction of this booklet, which a lot of this is based on. You can get this for free. It's called the Principia Apocrypha. Hopefully I've got that right. And there's a link below to it. And even if you're not thinking of 5e games, there's certain elements of this that will make your table a little bit better. So let's kind of jump into the OSR side of stuff. So it's rulings over rules. So it's often minimal skills and minimal feats. That doesn't mean that there's minimal things you can do. In fact, in many ways, it opens up more things that your players can do. It's a lot less about what's on a character sheet and a lot more about the players themselves, which for me tends to drive better engagement in the games, because the players aren't always, when it's the end of a turn in combat, they're not looking to their sheet to find out what they're going to do next. They're looking at what's happening to see how they can react to the situation. And with it being ruling kind of minimal skills and rulings over rules, a lot of the stuff is kind of based on common sense. So it's changed my relationship with the players. So if you're making rulings on, is it reasonable, and you're asking the players as well, or I am, does that seem fair? And players end up being not their harshest critics, but embracing that idea of, is it reasonable? And remember, like, once you get started, your players will have a bigger impact into decisions, because it's not necessarily you're saying that's the way it is. If it makes sense for the story, it makes sense for the story. There's less confrontation again, or at least for me, this has been my experience. And when I say less confrontation, it doesn't feel like it's me against the players. I'm essentially the world, and the players are interacting with the world. And I'm not creating situations to test them. I'm just creating situations that they run into and figure out how to deal with. You don't tell the story, which again changes your relationship with the game. You're not thinking of a story at all, really, or at least I'm not. You're creating a world, and but you're not creating the outcomes in it. The players are interacting, and this kind of links back to a video which will probably be linked somewhere up above here somewhere, which was done about motivations, situations, and locations. When you deal with those three things, when you've set up your motivations of your characters, the situations that they're in, and the locations, you don't have to prep what they're going to do. You get to interact with the players as they do mad stuff, which is really, really cool. Again, being fair, and I'm not saying you're not fair with 5e. Obviously, this is not a slight on it. This is my experience. It changes the narratives. Not being attached to the story means that you're not attached to an outcome of something. You don't really care what the outcome is. I'm like, you're a fan of the players and you're hoping the players succeed in what they want to do, but you're just being the world as accurate as the motivations, locations, and situations entail. You don't fudge dice, or at least I don't. I roll out in the open, apart from a couple of occasions in which I'll tell you. But any dice that matters, players see what it is. I don't kill players. Poor decisions kill players, and I'll cover that probably somewhere else. So again, prep is a really, really different experience. When I'm prepping for 5e game or for OSR style games, you're keeping loose ideas because you need to be able to interact with the players. Because I'm not worrying about rules and law and all of that area, I get to listen to the players, and listening to what the players are saying majorly impacts how a game goes. When they're coming up with ideas about the law's actually being created through their thoughts and what they're putting together, which is really, really cool. Random encounters. So there's loads and loads of tools in OSR that lead to this kind of emergent gameplay. So random encounters are super cool. Sometimes you're a little bit scared of doing that sort of stuff, so you can roll a few of them before the game, have them on a little card next to you, and throw them in when you're ready to do them. But also there's tools like reaction rolls. When they encounter something, that thing does not necessarily going to be terrible. It's not necessarily going to hate them. It's going to have other stuff that's going on. And a reaction roll means that, and combined with the fact that players are a lot more squidgy, so then the default action is not run in and hit it with a sword. It means that there's a lot more chance of interaction within the dungeon that isn't necessarily combat. Building into faction play and getting people ganged up against other people. And it creates a really, really cool situations that isn't just a party against the world. It's the party interacting with the world and kind of creating relationships within the world. A lot of them are obviously not nice, but reaction rolls and all these tools, as well as kind of like random encounters, really help develop the story. And you get to, as you start playing this kind of game, you get to rely more on them to create the story, and you're almost writing an account of what happened afterwards. Let the players go anywhere. So you can let the players go anywhere, and that seems a bit daunting to a lot of people, but you don't have to create the entire world. At the end of each session, you can ask the players, where do you want to go next? And then you just have to prep that little bit, which is really, really cool. And also, let the players build the world. 5e has an amazing thing in character creation. It's a game by itself. There's a huge amount of creativity in it, and that's one of the reasons why players love it. They get to create these massive characters and backstories. But there's kind of problems associated with that as well. Is when a player's created a really long backstory, it becomes a lot harder to lose that character, and they've invested so much time in that character build. Well, what tends to happen with this is the characters develop through play. Their stories develop through play, and I've had players, and some players in particular, Thomas, I'm talking about you, create towns and villages, and they came from here, and they help create the world and build the world as well, which changes the level of investment in the world. The investment starts to become in the world and in the story, as opposed to the primary investment being in the character, which again changes that relationship, which is kind of cool. Where else do we go? Yeah, get the players to help with build with world building. It like I've done that an awful lot with OSR style games, and it's just cool, and it's lazy as well because I'm time poor. XP is different. XP tends to be more around discovery, whether it's for gold, not just killing. So that leads to more creative problem solving, which is really cool. And as a GM now, what I do is I tend to create problems. I don't care about the solution. I don't create solutions to problems, because then I'm more inclined to drive the players towards my solutions. The fact is the players are more intelligent than you, and you might be more intelligent than one player, but but you're certainly not more intelligent than 4 or 5 players combined. They're going to come up with stuff that you could never think of. So it's cool to be able to create problems and see what they do with it. And it gives you that flexibility to react to them, and it becomes, again, for me, a little bit more part of the world. What else have we got here? Ask them to do... ask the players how to do it, or how they're going to do something. There's a lot of things, if they can explain how to do it, that you don't need to roll dice. It's not just, I want to figure this out, I roll an intelligence check. You ask them what they're doing to figure it out. And sometimes, it's not saying that you can't roll certain types of checks to get answers, but when they describe what they're doing, maybe that affects the DC, or maybe that makes it an easier roll. So again, players are interacting with the fiction, with the world, with the thing you've created, as opposed to with the character sheet, which again changes that relationship, which for me I found really, really cool and kind of liberating. You don't just give them cool weapons, +1, +2, that +3, whatever it is. That stuff is about increasing their chances for rolls. You create weird, odd relationships, or odd things that they will then find ways to use. And if you're creating magic items, create stuff with downsides as well. So again, you're always delivering this kind of choice of as and how to use it. And like, we've created loads of magic items where there's random bad stuff could happen. And the difference that makes the stories is so cool, because it just envelops at the table in ways that you could never do if you planned. Resources matter. So this is another thing that's kind of important with old school games. HP is a resource, or hit points. Spell slots are resources. Food, torches, time. All of those things are resources, and they lead to tension, and tension leads to hard decisions, and hard decisions makes the game worthwhile. And things like rolling for encounters, and these are the tools in the game. When you're rolling for random encounters, players are hanging around too long, and you're sitting at the table and you just drop a d6 behind your hand, and that's one of the rules that I would always do behind my hand. They know that stuff is coming around the corner, and it builds this tension and it creates this rush. And yeah, these are tools in the game that lead to emergent gameplay at the table, which means there's less pressure on me as a GM, which again I like. So some other stuff to do when you're running old school games is be their world. So telegraph lethality. Now, there's certain things in old school modules that I don't really like. I don't like, here's a door, you haven't checked it correctly, you failed a dice, bang, roll for poison or die. That's no choice for me. That's not enjoyable for me, or not enjoyable for players. So telegraphing the problems and letting them deal with it. Don't hide information. Your job is to be their sights and senses. It's not to let the dice rolls. It's give them the information to make the choices, and let it be their choices that cause trouble. You don't kill players. Bad decisions and bad rolls kill the players, and that again leads to that difference in relationship. And players always have the ability and are encouraged to run away. Running away gets you to fight another day, and that's something that tends to not be the case in 5th edition, as I've seen, because encounters are balanced, and when encounters are balanced, players know that there's always a good chance they can run into this thing, and healing is so easy, or a lot easier, that players feel that they can run into this challenge and face it head on. That's always the best way, whereas in a lot of these games they have to use their head, not head on, in order to get through them. And also, for me, like, the OSR is almost like an attitude, and the attitude is emergent gameplay. It's less prep, it's more story unfolding at the table, than kind of like having stories going on in you creating stories. For me, it's changed relationship with players, that it's more, again, I don't know what's going to happen in any session. I'll know where they're going to head the next. I'll know kind of what's around there. But then the players kind of like hit the world, and that's the session. And that is so much more fun for me. Remember, you don't have to pick up absolutely everything in this. You don't have to say, I'm immediately moving to a really old school game. There are games in the middle. Old Souls is one of them, but there's loads of them out there that use 5e mechanics but embrace this attitude. So it's not such a big jump. And remember, you can just take the bits that make your table better. And that's really what this is about. I'd thoroughly advise, well, I've already done a video on Maze Rats, which I'll probably link somewhere around here. This is free, the link is below. Pick up the Principia and yeah, you'll find something in there that you'll go, that appeals to me. And it's all about making your table a little bit more enjoyable or a little bit less stressful. So I hope you like this video. If you have liked this video, I'm really crap at this. Like it, but also subscribe because it makes a big difference to me. And I'm planning on doing, if you do like the idea of this, one of these videos for players, because always people say their players, they struggle to get their players to play anything but 5e. I've never had that issue. So hopefully I'm going to do a video maybe next week that you can give to your players to say, hey, this is where the difference is. You know, you're going to lose creativity here, but you're going to gain so much more here. So let me know if you liked it. Any comments below. Tell me how wrong I am, because like everybody has their opinion on the OSR. But I hope you enjoy this, and I'll catch you next week. Take it easy. Bye.